Hello, everybody. My name's Jim, and this is my tier ranking for all of the books that I read in 2023. There are 52 books here. I tried doing a tier list back in June. Actually, I did. I made the video. It's out there. But I feel like the tiers were a bit confusing, and it came across like I was trying too hard. So this is a template that I'm going to use moving forward. Hopefully, it's a bit easier to understand. And just to save time, which I'm doing a great job of right now, I'm going to group some of these books together. I'm going to say their titles, but I more or less have the same thing to say about some of them. So for some of those, I am going to clump those into one category. Without further ado, we're going to go with some of the obvious choices from my best of video. I'm Glad My Mom Died, The September House, Going Under, and I'm Afraid of Men. All of these books made my top 4 of 2023. I have a video out there for it, but I will talk about these books for at least 10 minutes if you give me time. Either you need to sit down or you need to run. 2 of them are memoirs. One of them is a quasi-memoir, and another is a horror thriller mystery. Not a lot of variety there, but I like what I like, and I like sharing to everyone what I like. Clearly, that's why I made a BookTube channel. So yeah, again, if you want to watch my best of video, feel free. It's linked down below or in the cards. Maybe both. Whatever. Moving on to the opposite end, where I talk about the books that made it into my, quote, worst of video. We have The Inmate, Behind Her Eyes, and The Puzzle Master. These were my 1-star reads for 2023. Some of these I probably should have DNF'd. I feel like a lot of people will enjoy these books a lot more than I did. In fact, when I made a dedicated Behind Her Eyes video, there were some comments that said they really enjoyed this book. So, as I always say, my opinion is not the be-all, end-all. But if you want to know my thoughts on these books, then do watch the worst of video. And just so we have cleared out every book from the best and the worst, I'm going to go ahead and rank those as well. Chrysanthemum certainly gets a rant. I've ranted about it a couple of times already. And then Tanya, the only rant that I have about this book is at the end, but it is a pretty big rant. It is something that caused my star rating to bump down to a 2. And it's actually the book that has inspired me to create videos that revolve around a single character. If you're interested in watching those videos at all, then do let me know down in the comments below. It will contain spoilers, but this book, this character, I really want to talk about them. I'm probably going to make the video anyway, but it's a lot more encouraging if I know that people would actually watch it. We have Randomize, which was also in my worst of video. I don't really have anything to rant about with Randomize, but that's because I don't remember a lot of it. 2/3 of the book seemed to be about quantum mechanics, which just went over my head. It wasn't a book that I remember very well at all. And then the last 2 books that made it into my worst of video, quotes, air quotes, and the reasons why I'm including air quotes are Clover and Clowns vs. Spiders. 2 completely different books. If you can't tell by the cover, you have a cute, sweet book that is from the perspective of an elementary school child who just lost her dad, and then you have scary clowns and cobwebs with spiders on them. 2 completely different subjects, books, plots. So, chances are if you like one, you may not like the other. I don't know. I exist. I read both of them, so maybe you would do this too. But these are the 2 books that I feel guilty about putting in my worst of video. These are the 2 books that I'm backpedaling on. Nothing that I say here is going to change the star ratings that I have for each of these books. So these 2 will remain 2-star reads for me. But when I made the worst of video, I made it first, and I figured I'd just clump all 1 and 2-star books together. This was before I came to the decision that I only wanted 4 books in my best of video. So yeah, I'm retroactively taking these 2 out of my worst of video. I'm leaving the rest. I think these 6 belong there, though these 3, absolutely, these 3 kinda, barely. But these 2 I would definitely take out. Now we're going to move on to the books that I did not create an end of year video for. We're going to start with some books that I'm just going to put in B. And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer. The Love Bug, it was cute. Don't Let Go was a good book I remember well. We Are All So Good at Smiling. Loved the prose in this one. Book Lovers, she nailed the small town vibe. Girl Interrupted was very informational, and I really enjoyed this book a lot. But a lot of these books, I can talk to you about them. If you bring up, certain scenes, I will discuss these books with you. But these are not books that I feel super energetic or passionate about. And, I think we could probably just finish out this tier, to be honest, since there are so many here already. P is for Pterodactyl is an alphabet book. There really isn't much else to say. And this one, Whatever Remains of Us in the End, is by an indie author. I remember a lot about this plot. There were a number of fades to black that I think could have used a bit more information to fill in some of those gaps. But I love that I read this book when I did last year. It's very gory. It's very explicit. It's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. But one thing I really like, and one thing I didn't say in my goals video, but it's something that I kind of want to do moving forward. Maybe not so much in 2024, but just, throughout this year and into the future, is I do want to pick up some books from indie authors who are first starting out. I don't really care so much about grammar and spelling, especially if I know that the author is indie, they're new, and they're just getting their feet wet in this really tough, scary industry. So I'm happy that I was able to pick this up and enjoy it at least as much as I did, because I do look forward to seeing Brandon Baker's progress. And if he keeps this theme up, this is definitely a mood read sort of theme since it's so gory and gruesome. But whenever I need this sort of thing in my life, maybe I will look out for another book that he's written. I'm excited to see where he goes. So yeah, I will gush about my indie authors. I love them. I appreciate them so much for getting out there and having the guts to do what I've been holding off for so many years. But as far as this book is concerned, I don't have that passion to talk about it, but I will talk about it because I remember it very well. It is ingrained in my brain just because of how gross it was. It was very visceral. It made me squirm. Summer Frost, There Will Come Soft Rains, and Sundial. I guess we could just call this the S group. These are books that I will match your passion if you initiate first, for sure. I loved the AI elements of Summer Frost and There Will Come Soft Rains. I thought There Will Come Soft Rains was super predictive and was kind of creepy in a way, in the fact that the short story was written in the 1950s and it included some prototype versions of the gadgets that we have today. I call them prototypes. They're not really, but they mimic or mirror some of the things that we have today, which I thought was really cool. I had no idea that this was written in the 1950s until I actually saw it. But yeah, it's really surreal. I enjoyed these a lot. Sundial is another book that I thought was super descriptive. I couldn't trust the narrators at all, so following the whole story was super tense, and I could certainly match your energy if you bring up specific scenes in either of these stories. We will talk about them together and have a great time. Now we're moving into some books and short stories that will give Random Eyes a little bit of company. The Best Girls by Min Jin Lee. I hate putting this here because I love Min Jin Lee. I love Pachinko. As you guys know, I won't shut up about that book, clearly. But The Best Girls has to go here. I don't remember a lot about the plot. I remember the ending. Otherwise, I don't really remember the build up to that. And similarly, I have Loteria, which is a short story collection that I read in December. It really is a risk, I think, when you create a short story collection, because the reader very easily, like me, I don't remember a lot of the short stories that I read. There are some that stick out to me. I enjoyed the ending, but because I don't remember all of them, they didn't really stand out to me. Some of the stories were hit or miss. I have to put this here. The Lesbian's Guide to Catholic School goes here. Play the Fool, beautiful cover, but same thing. And Love Pamela. I hate doing this to her, but A lot of the information in this memoir are things that I already knew. So when I finished this, I didn't really walk away from this memoir with new information about her outside of what she wrote in the beginning. A lot of these books ended up being 3-star reads, except for Randomize, which, as you know, was a 2-star read for me. So it kind of makes sense that these books are here. But I will say that if you were to pick these books up, you probably would get a lot more out of it than possibly I did. And that's the case with a lot of 2 and 3-star reads. There are some books that have either explicit subject matter or topics that hit a little bit too close to home that I don't necessarily want to talk about, but I guess wouldn't mind joining the conversation if you were to bring it up. As Familiar as Family, Speak No Evil, and Any Man are 3 of the books that fit that category. I rated all of them highly, either 4 or 5 stars. They were books that I don't like saying that I enjoyed them, but I enjoyed them. I feel a little guilty saying that. I got a lot out of them. They were impactful. They did what they set out to do, but they're here for that reason, because they're either explicit or they cover topics that hit a bit too close to home. Any Man is certainly the most explicit of these 3. So definitely, of all 3 of these, be careful if you pick this book up. I was going to put Anonymous there as well, because this short story had really tough subject matter about a non-white man with a non-white name being pulled aside at the airport. That is a real life horror story that is tough to read, or could be tough to read for a lot of people. So Anonymous could go here in this category as well, but the reason why I put this here is because I actually had this discussion with somebody recently. He had this exact same experience happen to him in the airport, and it made me angry all over again. So he and I ended up talking the whole way about his experience in the airport, being pulled aside and questioned for absolutely no reason. So if you give me 10 minutes, I will talk about this book. I will get passionate. Horror Store is a B tier book. This is certainly one that I think that people will like a lot more than I did. I don't know why I didn't include it with this group here, but I just happened to skip over it. So now here we go. There are some books that I rated 4 stars that if you give me 10 minutes, I will rave about these books. Emergency Skin is one of them. It made my brain hurt. Yellowface is already being discussed quite heavily among the book sphere, especially on BookTube and BookTok. If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English is one of them. One of the perspectives as well as the ending were a bit polarizing and controversial. I would love to talk about that with somebody. So if any of you pick up this book and I know about it, I will also let you know about it. And then, of course, Big Gay Wedding, which received its own playlist video from me. I loved this book. The only reason why these 4 books were rated 4 stars were that there were some things that didn't feel good, that I didn't really feel good about. There were characters that veered a little bit too into the caricature category, or in Emergency Skin's situation, my cynicism was warring with the fact that I really enjoyed this book. But these 4 books, I feel, could easily, upon reread, jump into 5-star territory for me because of what I remember, what stood out to me, what I feel like I could talk about, what I feel could carry a really meaningful discussion with people. So these are 4 books that I feel like in the future I'm going to pick up again and I'm going to reread. I think they deserve it. On the opposite end, there are books that I read and I enjoyed, but looking back, I don't really remember a lot that went on. The Red Tent, Lift, which Lift I still recommend to any mom. I gave this its own dedicated review in Mother's Day of 2023. I think this is a great memoir about a mom. She dedicated this memoir to her children who are now adults and could probably appreciate all of the work that she put into this. It's super short. It ended faster than I thought it would, but I don't remember a lot of the details. And then finally, this one's kind of a surprise. Legends and Lattes. This is a book that I gushed about when I wrapped it up. I love this book. And I have the tabs to prove that I love this book. I said in my wrap up that there were only tabs for what I liked and what I loved, and that was not a lie. I loved this book when I read it, but I don't remember a lot of the details about it. And it could be, there could be two reasons. The first reason is that this book was about setting up a cafe or a coffee shop. The details get fuzzy there. Especially the order of things when characters were introduced, what they did, because it was one of those cozy, light fantasies that didn't have a ton of action. It was cute. There just wasn't a lot of high-stakes drama that I could necessarily latch onto, I guess, months down the line as I'm making this video and I'm trying to remember certain events that happened. And number two, when Thimble was introduced, I fell in love with him. I can remember his recipes. I remember his energy. I remember him shifting back and forth on his little mouse feet, all excited to find out if everybody enjoyed his little treats. And he was just really cute. He was the character that was so cute that it made me want to cry. The way that he was written, the way that he was introduced, I loved him. Now, looking back, I feel like instead of Legends and Lattes, this book should just be Thimble, and that's it. Because beyond him, I don't remember a lot. I have a haze right now where it really is just him, and that's why it's in this tier. I feel so bad. I gushed about this book, and I loved it. I didn't lie, but oof, this happened. The Yellow Wallpaper, this is one of the books that I had a hard time ranking. It's the only reread of 2023, and I didn't even wrap it up when I reread it because I more or less had the same thoughts, but it was so much different reading it in my hand than listening to the audio version. I enjoyed it. I ended up bumping it from 4 stars to 5 stars, which is a similar situation to what I spoke about with these 4 books, where if I were to reread them, they could easily become 5-star books because I enjoyed them enough when I read them the first time. But the Yellow Wallpaper, I almost put it in this tier, but it doesn't belong in this tier. I think this book is definitely worth a discussion, but I think it's one that you need to initiate with me because it's another one that was ahead of its time when it was written. I think this was the only book that I read that was written before the 1900s, and it still holds true today about the conversation around mental health, especially postpartum depression. Now we're going to talk about some children's books that I maybe don't necessarily need 10 minutes because they're children's books. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about this one. But they're ones that I've already gushed about, either in a dedicated review like I did with Red, or during my wrap-ups. I gushed about I Go Quiet twice. Again, this is a book that I wish that I had when I was a kid myself. In a lot of these cases, I feel like the stories that are being told in these children's books are stories that carry on into the future. You have your initial themes, but as an adult reading these books to a child, you have these thoughts in your head that you want to bolster and encourage as the child grows. I think that these 3 stories are about self-appreciation, which is so important moving forward into life. I know for me as an adult, it took me a very long time to appreciate who I am and what I'm about. And if I would have had that foundation earlier on in my childhood, I might have reached that point a bit sooner in my life. I feel like these are good jump starts for that. And if you are interested in what I have to say about some of these books, they are in the wrap-ups that I link to in the description down below. And now, moving from children's books to crazy horror stories, The Cotton Candy Massacre and Snowball. I am definitely a part of the niche audience that enjoyed these stories. The Cotton Candy Massacre, I'm surprised. The analysis video that I made for this book has received a lot of views compared to some of the other videos that I have produced about other books. Like I said, it does have a very tight audience, and that is super cool. I do plan to read part 2 in 2024, so that's exciting. I am part of that group. So, and then just to fill out, got at least 10 minutes, we have The Quiet Tenant. I loved the perspective of Rachel. I also really enjoyed Emily. You Can't Be Serious. I thought about putting this in You Initiate, but I really love Cal Penn, and I loved his memoir. This was amazing to listen to in audio format. I still need to purchase this book for myself so that I can have the physical version and see some of the childhood photos that he mentioned as he was reading. And then there's I Survived by Victoria Cilliers. This is another memoir. Even though in my goals video I said that I didn't want to do any dedicated reviews, I kind of want to do one for this one. I want to talk about this story. It's an amazing story. It's miraculous what she was able to survive. I would recommend this memoir to anybody. Maybe I'll do a dedicated review for this. Now we're down to these last 3, and actually I want to talk about this one last, so we're going to move that over to the right. We have There by Tommy Orange. Similar to The Yellow Wallpaper, I was going to put it here because there were so many perspectives that I don't remember some of the characters' stories in this book. But there are enough that I loved that if you were to initiate a conversation with me about those specific characters, I will match your energy and we will talk about those characters. Orville, talk to me about Orville. Otherwise, I'll at least talk about it. And also with Soul of the Deep, I'm also going to put this in You Initiate. This could be a cop-out because it is a sequel in a duology, and it's one of those books that I don't want to really talk about first because you have to have read the first book in order to understand what is occurring in this second book. You need to know the relationships. You need to know how the first book ended. So I can't talk about this book first. You have to read it first, and you have to tell me that you read it. Otherwise, I'm not spoiling this. Chapter 1, I'm not spoiling this. But even still, even if I knew that everybody in the world has read this book, I still would probably put it here, which is weird because I rated this book, I rated Soul of the Deep 5 stars, whereas Skin of the Sea, the first book in this duology, I rated 4 stars. I am more inclined to talk about Skin of the Sea for 10 minutes. I think because it was my introduction to a fantasy that I actually enjoyed. It was my first fantasy where I realized, oh, this genre isn't scary. It's something that I can actually digest. The writing was beautiful. That, I feel, is why I would put it in Got at least 10 minutes, is because it has that extra meaningful impact on me. So yeah, it's an interesting situation, but to keep it simpler, which I already ruined that, I threw that out the window. The reason I'm putting this in You Initiate is because it is a sequel. I don't plan on reading a lot of series in the future, so I don't feel so bad about putting this here. And then finally, Anxious People. This was a 4-star read for me, but it's actually going into the rant tier. There are multiple reasons that I've already kind of explained as I talked through these books and their categories. Again, why I didn't just create these tiers as like best to worst. But this is the most extreme reason why I did not do that. This was a 4-star read, like I said, but there was one thing in this book that I will rant about. There's one thing in this book that kept it from being a 5-star read. It is something that I equate to me being in high school. When I didn't turn in my assignments, my parents would go talk to my teachers who would be very disappointed. They would say, he would do so much better in my class if he would just try. And they would come back and say, you would have made straight A's if you would have just done this work. That is the feeling that I have with Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. It could have been amazing. I would have loved it. I latched on to the characters so much. The only other problem that I had was with dialogue, where a lot of the characters kind of sounded the same. But otherwise, this was an amazing read and why I decided that Frederick Bachman is an author that I will pick up more and more and more. But there is this one thing that I will rant about. And I've already ranted about because this book had a dedicated review and it was a spoiler. So if you want to watch that dedicated review, check it out. But yeah, that's why this is here. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed in Anxious People. I'm disappointed in that part that dropped it a whole star. But yeah, otherwise, that is why this is not from best to worst. And because of that, I feel a lot better about where I placed these books in their tiers. Because if I were to have made this a best to worst tier, I wouldn't know where to put some of these books. This makes more sense to me, and this is the template that I am going to use moving forward. If you enjoyed this video for whatever reason, do leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm not going to link to all of these books' Goodreads pages in the description, but if you were interested at all in any of these books, do search for them and check out their synopses, some other spoiler-free reviews. Check out my wrap-ups if you want to hear my take on some of these. That way you can formulate your own decision whether or not you actually want to read them. Otherwise, I have been Jim. You've been great. Happy reading.